So we're continuing now with our introduction to Json for Alpha Anywhere programmers, and we're showing how you can make a callback from the client, from the UX component to the server, get some JSON data that is generated on the server, send that data back to the client, and then have the client use the templating feature in Alpha Anywhere to create some nicely formatted HTML. So at this point, when we run the component and we click this button over here, we can see that even though the server sent back the name John Jones, the expanded template still says Fred Smith, and that's because the template itself is using the hard-coded data over here. So now let's go and replace underbar D here with the data that was put into the dialog object's underbar data property by our XBasic callback. So here's the XBasic function that handles the callback, and you can see that when this callback returns, it sends back the JavaScript code here to put the JSON data that was computed on the server into this underbar data property. So let's go back to our JavaScript here, and we can see now that this underbar D property, which represents the data that the template will expand, comes from the underbar data property over there. So now when we go ahead and run this, we can see now that when we fetch the data from the server, instead of we now see John Jones. And let's go now and add something to our template that consumes the date property over there that was sent back from the server. So we'll go back to our client-side code here, and we'll say hello, and then we'll just say on, and then we'll go here and put in date into our template, and then maybe put a period in over there. So now let's go here and click this button over there, and you can see now that we're seeing the date on the server that was computed. So what we've shown over here is how an AJAX callback can be made to the server. The server XBasic is now free to use any XBasic code that it wants to compute data that it would like to send back to the server. All the data that you want to send back to the server gets encoded on the server side into an XBasic object, in this case this P variable over here. Then we take this P variable and we convert it into a JSON string, and then we send that JSON back to the client and keep it on the client, where we can then consume it in our after AJAX complete function. So this is a pretty simple example. So what we're going to do now is take this example and make something that is much richer. So let's just go back temporarily to the template tester, and we'll go here to the template tester over here, and we've been working with this really simple example that has this little piece of JSON data over there and this trivial template over here. But let's go and load another example from the template tester gallery here and take a look, say, at this example. So in this example over here, you can see that we've got slightly more complex JSON data, but not much more complex. We've got, you can see here, since we're starting with a square bracket, this means that the JSON object is an array, and then inside this array, so there's the first item in the array, and there's the comma that separates the first item from the second item and then the third item. Each item in the array is an object. So you can see there's the first object that has order ID date, and then the order items property inside this object is an array that has the order details. So if we look over here, we can see there's the first order, there's the second order, and there's the third order. So computing this data on the server is obviously is the appropriate thing to do, because typically this data would come from a database query, and then you'd like to send this JSON back to the client, and then on the client side you'd like to consume this JSON data and output this HTML. So in addition to the JSON data, we've got the template over here which defines this output, and we've got the JavaScript function that gets called by the template. So you can see we have this JavaScript function here called order items preprocess. So we're continuing our introduction to JSON, And if we look in the template here, we can see that the template is calling into that JavaScript function called order items processor, and then finally the template uses some CSS, and here's the CSS that the template uses. So what we're going to do now is take the example that we've built, the simple example that we built right now, and expand that so that it basically actually gets this data from the callback and then generates this nice looking HTML report on the client side. So let's go now and start out by just simply copying this JSON data to the clipboard, and then we'll go back to our function over here, and we'll add in this JSON data as the return value from our callback function. So we'll go back to our function here. Let's close this down temporarily, and now we'll go over to our JSON, and let's actually go ahead now and make another button, and we'll call this maybe say fancy report, and again we're going to go here and do an AJAX callback, and we'll maybe this time we'll do the AJAX callback, we'll call it XB3, and then we'll save this, and now we'll go to our XBasic side here, and we'll define a function called XB3. I'll just make some space here. So here we go, function XB3 as C, E as P, end function, and now let's go here and say dim JSON as C, JSON equals percent text percent text percent. So I'm just going to paste in this JSON data over here. Now in this particular case here, we're just going to hard code the JSON data, but in a real world example, instead of hard coding the JSON data over here, you would do database queries to get all this information, and you would put it into an XBasic dot variable and then use JSON generate to generate this JSONs. But for the purposes of this example, we're going to just assume that we're going to use this hand-coded static JSON. But again, as I've mentioned, you would really want to generate this by making a database query. And so now let's continue with this code here. So what we want to do now is take this JSON and put it into a temporary variable on the inside the dialog object. So let's go here and just copy those 3 lines, and I'll go here and paste this in. So I'm going to say let's put this inside a variable called data2. So there's my JSON, and we're going to stick it in a variable called data2, and then we want to set xb3 equal to that value over there. So now we basically have an AJAX callback that is setting the value of this variable underbar data2 inside the dialog object. So now the next thing that we need to do is copy the JavaScript function and also the template definition into our component. So let's go back now to our component and to our template tester and copy the template out next. Actually, before we do that, let's also go back here to our JavaScript functions, and what we want to do is we want to have another version of this expand template here. So I'm going to go here and copy this and then paste it here and give it another name. So I'll call this expand template 2, and what we want to do is expand template 2 into another div, not one called message 2 but one called message 3, and we want to call this function in the after callback complete event handler for our AJAX callback. So let's pause now and pick this up in the next video. So we're continuing now with our advanced example of sending JSON from the server to the client and then generating some HTML using the templating feature in Alpha Anywhere. So we already know that the data that we're sending back is now stored in underbar data 2, because you can see here the XBasic function xb3 is putting the return data in underbar D2, so that's good. And now let's go back here to JavaScript. Here's the expand2 template function. So we'll go back to this button over here that does fancy report, and we'll specify that our after Ajax complete function is expand template 2. Then let's go ahead here and put a div where we can actually put the expanded template. So I'm going to just simply go there and duplicate that control, then move it down to the bottom, and then change the ID from message 2 to message 3, and now go back to my JavaScript function over here. So what we'd like to do is set this to message 3. So now the next thing we need to do is go and replace this template here with the template that we can steal from the template tester. So we'll go back to the template tester here, go back to the template tester there. So there's our template, and we'll click the show JavaScript button here, and go now and copy the template. So here's the template definition, starts over there and continues through there. So we'll just copy that to the clipboard and go ahead then and click OK, and then close this down, go back to our code here and just simply paste it in. So there's our template right now, and we can just go here and make it look nice by indenting it one level. So there's our template. So now we've got our data coming from the server. There's our template. Here we're going to go and expand the template. Over here, actually, we just inadvertently deleted the settings, so we can go and steal the settings from over here. Let's just go and steal these settings because they're good. So we'll go there and put our settings back in, and now then after we expand the template, we're going to go and set the inner HTML of message 3 to the expanded template. So if we were to actually try and run this right now, it wouldn't work correctly because we still haven't copied the CSS in, and we haven't copied in the function that the template uses. So we'll go back now to our template tester, and this time we're going to go here and take the JavaScript function. So let's go and copy this function to the clipboard, and then go back now to our component definition, and on the JavaScript side let's just simply paste in that function. So now we have that function pasted in, and then the final thing that we need to get from the template tester window is the actual CSS. So let's go here and take this CSS, copy that to the clipboard. So now we've got all of that copied to the clipboard, and go back to our component. So on the component side, we're going to go now to locally defined CSS. So we'll go over here and choose CSS local definitions, and then just switch to the code window and then paste that in. Go ahead and click OK. And so now we've brought the CSS into the component as well. So now let's pause and pick this up in the next video. So we're continuing now with our introduction to Json, and we're working on an advanced example where we use the templating feature of Alpha Anywhere to take some JSON that was retrieved from the server and create a nicely formatted report. And we've been using the example in the template tester, window over here, and in bringing this example into our UX component by copying the JSON data, copying the template itself, the JavaScript and the CSS, and we pasted the CSS into the local CSS definition. So now we're ready to actually test out our code. So we go here to working preview, and we click our button. So the button makes an Ajax callback. After the Ajax callback completes, the client-side code, the JavaScript function is called that expands the template, and you can see here we've now expanded the template, and here's our template. We've got 3 orders, and there are the line items for each order, etc. So if we were to go back now to our XBasic code over here, and let's just go and copy this, so from there to there, we'll copy that. We'll put in a comma now, because now we're adding a new item to our array. So we'll give this a new number. So we'll go here and call this item number 4, and let's go here and change the date here to say the 21st, and then let's go and delete 2 of the line items. So now this order only has 2 line items. Delete the comma there, because the last item in an array doesn't have a trailing comma. So now let's go ahead now and save this. Go ahead now and go back to working preview. Click our button, and you can see now it says we have 4 orders, and there's the last order that we added with 2 line items. So what we've shown over here in this advanced example is how an AJAX callback can go to the server, can get a very complex set of data that is represented as a JSON object, send that data back to the client, and then using the templating features in Alpha Anywhere, on the client side you can create very rich HTML layout from that JSON data and then display it in the UX component. So in summary, what we've shown in this series of videos is how JSON can be used on the server side to serialize XBasic objects, both and you can use JSON generate to serialize XBasic objects into JSON data, and then JSON parse to parse JSON data back into XBasic objects. Then on the client side you can use JSON stringify and JSON parse to both serialize JavaScript objects into JSON strings and to parse JSON strings into JavaScript objects, and then how JSON is a perfect mechanism for passing information from the client side to the server side, or from the server side to the client side. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the series.